Serving Central New York for 50 years. News Channel 9, the local station.
As air raid sirens sound, Israel and Saudi Arabia come under attack. Good evening, everyone. People in Israel and Saudi Arabia have run for cover tonight, huddling in sealed shelters, their gas masks on. All along, Iraq had warned it would bomb Israel if the U.S. attacked Iraqi forces. That threat became a harsh reality during the early morning hours in Tel Aviv.
Now it's uncertain how many missiles were actually launched against Israel and how many actually landed. Also unclear whether or not the missiles were carrying chemical weapons. ABC's Dean Reynolds was on the air live when the first air raid sirens sounded.
Dean, can you hear me? Dean Reynolds, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Peter. I don't know if you can hear me through this contraption.
Yes, I can hear you just fine, so don't worry about your ability to communicate with us at all, and we can hear your radio in the background. I gather that people throughout the country have been ordered to put their gas masks on?
That's correct. And to go to a sealed room.
Are you in a sealed room?
We are indeed, Peter.
Tonight, the first pictures of the multinational attack on Baghdad last night. Peter Jennings describes the pictures earlier tonight.
That is in the western sector of Baghdad. That is a water tower not very far from the Al Rashid Hotel from where these pictures were taken.
Those were pictures from last night as Operation Desert Storm was launched.
You may remember Mike was activated along with a Central New York unit of the Coast Guard Reservists in September. Mike is in the small country of Bahrain now, traveling back and forth through the Persian Gulf to Saudi Arabia as a communications specialist.
I think the morale of the people and the mood is pretty good right now. But up until about 2 weeks ago, they were kind of down because they were anticipating, most of them, having a rotation after 90 days and coming back home, and they were anticipating being home for Christmas. Well, that has since changed, and they've been told they're being extended for another 90 days, so they'll be here up until 6 months. Now, they didn't like that, but at least they know about it, and now they're starting to learn to live with that, so the morale's starting to come back up again.
When Dave Hennessy's not manning a machine gun on the front of a Coast Guard patrol boat, he's a manliest police officer. Health specialist Diane Avery is a nurse from Syracuse, but now she's taking care of soldiers in Saudi Arabia. Hennessy and Avery are two of several Central New Yorkers in a Coast Guard port security unit assigned to a harbor along the eastern Saudi coast. The unit's main job is to protect massive supply ships. Terrorism is the unit's main worry.
Central New York has given the men and women a constant reminder that they're remembered back home. This 50-foot banner was given by school children in Solvay, New York, and it hangs right in the compound where the soldiers gather for work every morning.
5,000 miles from Syracuse, they have made a new, if only temporary, home. When the unit arrived here in late September, there was only concrete. It's not Central New York, but it'll have to do until at least the end of February. That's when the unit is scheduled to come home for good. At a port along the eastern Saudi coast, I'm Fred D'Souza for 9 News.
9 News, making a difference. Central New York's news source. Come on home to your family. We're waiting just for you. We'll tell you what's been going on and everything that's new. Come on home to your family.
Just getting home around 5 o'clock?
We have a new way to help you catch up on your world. Hi, I'm Maureen Green.
And I'm Dan Cummings. Weekdays at 5, join us for 9 News Now, your first look at what's happening right now around Central New York and around the world.
So while you're preparing dinner, we've prepared the news for you in this 5 o'clock world.
He's in with the weather now. Jim, we're 3 days into the month of March. No snow. Does this mean wintertime is all over?
I don't think so. We saw some flurries today, but I think tonight we're looking at a little bit of light snow. And
I was afraid you'd say that.
And I think we could see an inch or so.
All right. Tell me more.
Okay. There was a cold front that moved through central New York this morning. That was responsible for the snow showers that we saw earlier on. but then high pressure tried to work its way in, and it brought some partly sunny skies around noontime. But the front that went through that decided to stall out.
Senior co-captain plays 1, the point, or 2, the shooting guard, Steve Infante.
You know, some nights I have to be the scorer, some nights I have to play good defense, whatever. Try to do whatever I can to help the team win.
Steve, you played through some tough situations and you're still playing, and you're playing well. On behalf of Central New York 9, please accept this trophy and welcome as our latest athlete of the week.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hit by a plow. My husband had to pull me out of a snowbank. What a time, what a time.
What a time for all of us, the blizzard of '93. Good evening, everyone. We have all been a part of history now, witnesses to the biggest snowstorm ever to hit Central New York. It appears as if the worst is now behind us. We have team coverage of the storm. Dave Eichhorn will be along in a few minutes to give us the latest on what we've been through and what's next. We begin with a look at how Central New Yorkers are digging out. An army of snowplows waged a war this morning, battling through the day to clear streets clogged with huge piles of white stuff. Central New Yorkers woke this morning to find themselves in awe of the raw power of Mother Nature. Driving became risky business, many deciding to bag the cars and grab the bags.
Doing some grocery shopping. Having a great time in Blizzard 1993.
The worst may be over, but we will forever remember this weekend as the blizzard of '93. Stuck is how a lot of people are finding themselves at Syracuse's Hancock Airport. Our Dan Maffei has been following this story for us, and he joins us live outside our studios. Dan, you were there earlier and the airport was closed. Tell us the status now. Is it still shut down?
Well, Christy, the airport is expected to be shut down until at least 6 a.m. tomorrow, and with good reason. As you can see just outside our studios here in East Syracuse, the wind is still blowing. Visibility is pretty bad. It's still very cold, I can tell you. And that brings up a problem that many people have been having if they get stranded at the airport. It's not just that they can't get around in the air, it's that even getting around on the ground is a problem.
Syracuse remains under siege by snow and high winds. One of the casualties, the Carrier Dome, which was temporarily deflated because of the huge volume of snow. The dome came down in 1984 as a precaution, but that storm was nothing compared to this one.
Nothing is the same magnitude of this storm. I think it was about 18 inches of snow back then, and it was also a lot warmer. Right after the storm, the temperature was 40 degrees or a little bit higher. What's making it difficult for us now is that the temperature is so cold out in the wind, and it's very, it's not melting as quick as we'd hope.
Meantime, Central New York has been grounded, even though no one can see the ground.
Now, the state of emergency continues in almost every county in Central New York. That means that you can't drive on the roads unless it's absolutely necessary. But there are some buses running. Earlier, the Syracuse and Oswego buses were running, and some Central buses are running. As long as you're not going too far out, they're running to about Liverpool in the northern suburbs and to around here in East Syracuse in the eastern suburbs, but not much further. Christy?
You mentioned buses, Dan. How about trains? Can folks get on a train and head out of town?
Actually, trains seem to be the one way you can still travel. Trains now north of Washington, D.C. are running pretty much on time, even up here in upstate New York.
This is what it looked like at about 6:30 this morning. Signs in windows reading closed until 8 a.m. Empty streets. The only traffic on the road, snowplows. One driver says he started his day at 4 p.m. Saturday clearing the streets and expects to be on the job through this evening. Down the main street in Fulton, it was nearly a whiteout, but those keeping the roads clear expect another long day.
For those trying to keep the streets clear here in Fulton, Mimi's is just about the only place open. In Fulton, Kay Newman, 9 News.
And the heavy snow in Fulton did cause a building to collapse. Police there tell us the old Super Duper store, now a building under construction, crumbled under the weight of snow. No one was hurt. Now, for a look now at what we can expect for the rest of the night and tomorrow, meteorologist Dave Eichhorn joins us now. Dave, you've been following this even before it started. It still looks pretty nasty out there right now.
Yeah, now the lake effect's kicking in, and we were wondering whether there'd be dry air aloft that would hold the lake effect back, because that was showing very strongly this morning upwind of us. Well, that's no longer an issue anymore. The lakes are doing it on their own, and I think we're going to see some pretty heavy snow around here tonight.
Interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to bring you this live special report from 9 News.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Lazarus. We told you a few moments ago about the very bad news for Syracuse's economy today and for so many families who make their home here. GM's Fisher Guide plant in Salina is going to be closed by the end of next year. We're going to take you live now to the plant where Bill Winters is speaking right now. Let's go live to Fisher Guide.
Spelled out in the release, the Syracuse facility will be closing sometime in the fall of 1993. So I guess if there were any, I'd like to respond to your questions right now and see what we can do to help you. The one proviso I'd give you is that this decision was just made yesterday. We don't have a lot of the answers that you would like. We don't have a lot of the answers that our employees are looking for.
Munson's murder.
Now, this latest and most stunning development yet in the Cayuga County murder case brings justice delayed for Bianco and his family and prolongs one of the area's biggest mysteries. Julie Munson would be 30 years old today. She never made it to 19. For a year and a half in the early 80s, her face was frozen on posters, missing. Parents, friends, and family hoping for the best, fearing the worst. The worst came true in April 1983 when a student taking soil samples found Julie's body here in the Montezuma Wildlife Refuge.
It's been a tragic, long, frustrating, difficult, agonizing experience, but now we do have an answer. It's a tragic answer, but yet it's an answer.
The missing person investigation was over. The murder probe was underway. It would be 2 more years before the law had their man, or so the law thought. Tom Bianco was indicted for the Monson murder. The indictment and Bianco's conviction in 1986 were based largely on the testimony of this man, Tom Calcebetta. He said then Bianco confessed to the crime. Last year, Calcebetta's conscience got the better of him. He admitted that his damning testimony was a lie, that Bianco never confessed. Tonight, Bianco is a free man. Persistence pays off for a defense team headed by attorney Joe Fahey. The man on the defensive now is former District Attorney Paul Carbonero, labeled a liar by the judge who gave Bianco his freedom. The new DA, Jim Vargason, will not prosecute Bianco any further. Whoever did kill Julie Monson remains a mystery. Tonight, in the 12th year after her disappearance, the Monson murder case is wide open once again. DA Jim Vargason told me about a month ago he wanted to make sure that the integrity of the Cayuga County District Attorney's Office was no longer in question. He may have taken a big step in that direction today. Carrie?
Well, Dan, Vargason said 2 things today that seem to contradict one another. First, he said that he will not prosecute Tom Bianco again, but he said that Tom Bianco is still a suspect, along with one other person.
Because officially the case, of course, remains open. And of the 2 suspects that are known, Bianco has to remain one of them. But since the DA's office has previously told us that Tom Calcebetta, that damning prosecution witness, would not be called at any second trial, very hard to imagine what the evidence is remaining, if any, against Tom Bianco. So the case is open. Bianco is still under the magnifying glass, but I think the days ahead will tell how sharply focused that glass will be.
Snow, snow, and more snow.
The first big storm of '94 does its worst. Look at the effects happening now.
Good afternoon from your 24-hour news source, and thanks for joining us.
Happening now, just about everything scheduled for tonight has been canceled by the storm. It's a good time to stay right where you are.
It almost goes without saying after what we've seen today, beginning with snow steadily falling first thing this morning.
And now we're in an official state of emergency in Onondaga County. It's been quite a day in all. First, the school closings came rolling in. Many districts that did not make an early decision to close wound up shutting down as the snow came pouring down as heavily as 5 inches an hour. It closed routes 81, 690, and 481, and other main roads have been impassable. Secondary roads completely impossible.
Her room is just as she left it the day she disappeared almost 2 months ago. Tonight we take you inside Sarah Wood's world. Wood family believes Sarah's story can't be seen or heard enough times, that an appeal could break someone's silence and finally bring their daughter home. He is a man on a mission to find his missing daughter. Tonight we find out how Bob Wood finds the courage to carry on. The case of Sarah Wood, abducted while riding her bike near her home in Herkimer County, has come to symbolize every parent's deepest fear that no matter how careful you are, you cannot keep your child completely safe.
She is bright and energetic. A typical 12-year-old, full of hopes and dreams.
Her dream was to be a singer or a dancer, and really, I think that was one of her dreams, was to grow up and be a singer, dancer, and she did have a lot of talent, a lot of showmanship. She liked to entertain, there was no doubt about that. She did it at church. She would get up and sing a song at church by herself, very bold. Would help me. I sing a song. She would be the first one to volunteer to help me.
9 News reporter Scott Viral is there live with more on the story now. Scott, what can you tell us?
Rod, in short, a city police officer who was working undercover has been shot in the head, and right now the prognosis is not good. What happened was he was conducting an undercover drug investigation in the parking lot outside Mario's Big M Market here on the corner of Brighton and South Salina. He was doing this investigation in conjunction with several drug agents from the state, from the DEA, and from the city. He was sitting in his car outside in the parking lot when a suspect apparently came up and fired one shot through the window, striking the officer in the head.
At the top of the news, from your 24-hour news source, police officers arraigned in the Johnny Gamage case.
Also today, P&C workers are taking part in a crucial contract vote. I'm Dan Cummings.
I'm Carrie Lazarus. It's 5 o'clock and you're watching 9 News Now.
Happening now, 3 police officers charged in the death of Syracuse native Johnny Gamage take another step in the legal process.
4 months to the day after Johnny Gamage died along a Pittsburgh highway, 3 police officers are officially charged now with his death.
In our continuing coverage of the Gamage case, 3 officers charged were arraigned in Pittsburgh's Court of Common Pleas today. Arraignments in Pennsylvania are less formal than here in New York. Defendants are not required to attend. Today, only one of the 3, John Vodis, appeared at the court clerk's office alongside his attorney, Jim Eckert.
Real reasons to watch 9 News. Experienced reporters bringing you more local news.
And around 5:38, Rod will have Kiplinger's personal finance report.
Dave Eichhorn's weather source forecast at 5:42.
At 5:50, the Family Health Cast with Carrie Lazarus.
And Dan Cummings will report the news from your area and all around central New York.
More local news makes the difference. Real reasons to watch 9 News.
I'm Nancy Duffy in North Syracuse. Coming up on 9 News, a new owner for an old business.
Look at this lineup here. 9 News, Daybreak, followed by Good Morning America, and then us at 9, huh? Mornings are looking pretty good in Syracuse.
Well, here's something mundane but very necessary. Dishwashing detergents. Now there's a new wrinkle in the Suds game.
Rod's here with an assessment of how the new Ultra brands work from Consumer Report.
Terry and Dan, you just can't use regular dshwashing detergent anymore. You've got to have the new Ultra. Consumer Reports has just tested the new Ultra concentrated dishwashing liquids like Dawn here. Procter & Gamble introduced them after their success with Ultra laundry detergents.
You're watching News Channel 9 at 5 o'clock. Coverage you can count on. With Dan Cummings and Carrie Lazarus.
Come on home to your family. We're waiting just for you. We'll tell you what's been going on and everything that's new. Come on home to your family. We're waiting for you.
His political career filled with bombshells, political friends and foes. Remember Lee Alexander. Straight ahead on News Channel 9. Good evening, everybody. Rod is off tonight. He served as mayor of Syracuse longer than anyone. Along the way, he changed the city for the better, stood on the national political stage, and also spent time in prison for accepting kickbacks.
Right now, though, friends and one-time political foes of Lee Alexander are remembering the better times they shared with him. Alexander died Christmas morning at a Syracuse home just 3 weeks after being diagnosed with lung cancer.
He swings on it. There's a ball into left field.
They called it the North Side Ball Orchard. Its construction helped pull the community out of the Great Depression. And what took place within its fences brought the community together for more than 6 decades. Some of the greatest players ever took the field here over 60 years. Some, like Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson, merely visited. Some, like Will Thurman Munson and Jimmy Key, came to stay, if only for a short time. They left behind treasured memories and a ballpark long since worn out. Stadiums aren't built in a day, but the replacement for Big Mac took more than 20 years. As baseball moved into a new era, Syracuse was stuck in the old, held there through 2 decades of political wrangling, concerns about attendance, and even the threatened loss of the team.
If you build it, they will come.
But in the end, the community once again came together. What needed to get done, got done. And the day Central New Yorkers have long dreamed of is finally here. And with it, Syracuse's own Field of Dreams. We are live, and you are looking at magnificent PNC Stadium in Syracuse as the Syracuse Sky Chiefs get set to take on the Norfolk Tides. Opening day 1997. And how is opening day 97 different than any other? Well, no one is walking around this magnificent stadium, one of the premier stadiums in all of minor league baseball, and saying, how is our team going to be?
Here we are in the Tug Hill Plateau, pretty much the snow capital of the world at this point. We're in Barnes Corners, where they were just on the edge of the 3 to 7 foot snowfall totals. You can see the snow is piled up 5-6 feet here. They're used to seeing a lot of snow, but what made this storm so productive?
First, there is the wind direction. Cold westerly winds travel the entire length of Lake Ontario, giving the lake the maximum opportunity to add heat and moisture to the cold air mass, creating the clouds. Secondly, this westerly wind kept the band over basically the same location, not for several hours, but for more than a day. And finally, forced this air to rise to 2,000-foot elevation of the Tug Hill. This added lift helped produce the 3, 4, even 5-inch-an-hour snowfall rates. But if you go looking for 90 inches of snow on the ground, you're going to have a hard time finding it. The snow compresses and settles quickly, so the 90-inch snowfall in Montague is actually only 75 inches on the ground now. Still an impressive total. In Barnes Corners, I'm Tug Hill Teskey for News Channel 9.
When the weather turns extreme, count on the News Channel 9 Storm Team. Experienced meteorologists who grew up here, and the most advanced weather forecasting technology means you get the most accurate weather information available. The team, Dave Eichhorn, Dave Longley, and Jim Teskey. The technology, 3D SkyTrack, Doppler Storm Track, Lightning Track, and the News Channel 9 WeatherNet. The best people, the best technology. Weather coverage you can count on.
Monday morning, we are on emergency power here at News Channel 9 because of some severe thunderstorms, perhaps tornadic, that went through the northern part of Cayuga, northern part of Onondaga counties, southern Oswego, southern Oneida, northern Madison counties between 1 and 2:30 this morning. We have no power at News Channel 9 as we conventionally would get. We are running on emergency power right now, and we have some updates to extend you at this point. States of emergency have been declared in Onondaga County, the city of Syracuse, the city of Nina, and the village of Phoenix. That means nobody out on the roads. They're trying to do, the officials and emergency crews are trying to do their best to get to areas where there are trees and power lines down to help people that may need help and to try and establish communications and electricity to the area as quickly as possible. We have 2 confirmed fatalities at the state fairgrounds from damaging thunderstorm winds.
If you had been awake, outside, and trying to get home a little after 1 o'clock this morning, this is what you would have seen.
Some of those who did see it say they've never been so afraid. And if you were lucky enough to sleep through it all, you woke up to a Labor Day disaster. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of News Channel 9. Central New York got hammered overnight with howling winds and flashing lightning that left most of the area in the dark and many homes and businesses absolutely trashed.
The worst, 2 people dead at the state fairgrounds. 1 person in a trailer was killed. The other was killed at a concession stand when the storm ripped through around 1:30 a.m. People there were doing cleanup duty. It was an awful scene out there this morning, and I guess in some ways it still is.
No, it really has not improved at all, Rod and Carrie. It's been, the tragedy has been replaced by sadness,
a bit of despair on the part of merchants here who are left to clean up what's left, and certainly quite a bit of sorrow over the loss, as you said, of 2 lives at the fairgrounds over the course of this storm. The only place that we know of so far throughout central New York where lives were lost during this storm.
Elisa, the force of that storm was unbelievable. We saw the damage to the Dietz building, but did any of that flying debris do any damage to surrounding things like cars or other buildings?
You can see it extending way off like a block away. You know, it's the bricks. They've only sectioned off this one block, but you can see just, you know, bricks extending beyond there. And as we drove up, you can never believe the magnitude until you're absolutely right here on the scene. It's just amazing, just extending beyond. And of course, there is a continued risk that the building will continue to crumble, and that's why they've got this blocked off.
This is our storm tracker. It's the result of the Doppler radar looking inside the storm and taking a whole lot of measurements. The computer does a lot of calculating and comes up with this. This orange circle indicates rotation taking place up inside the storm.
We're looking at in the amount of effort it will take to clean up from this storm, a storm that seemed to take everyone by surprise. What everyone says is that it all seemed to happen without warning.
Curfew seriously, aren't they?
Rod, they are taking it so seriously that Syracuse police wouldn't even allow us to be within the city limits for this live broadcast. So we are right here, right on the city line, but we are on the Solvay side because the curfew does not take effect here until midnight.
Coverage you can count on. News Channel 9, 11 at 11.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rod Wood, and here's what's new tonight. The historic impeachment vote that had been scheduled to begin tomorrow won't. House Republicans have agreed to a delay of several days due to the military strikes against Iraq called Operation Desert Fox. We have live team coverage for you tonight with ABC News correspondent Andrea McCarran live in the nation's capital. Andrea?
Good evening. It has been an extraordinary day here in Washington, where the momentum of the ongoing impeachment proceedings came to an abrupt and explosive halt when the U.S. airstrikes began.
The first wave of the military operation, dubbed Desert Fox, lit up the sky over Baghdad on the eve of what was to have been the historic impeachment debate and vote on Capitol Hill.
Saddam Hussein and the other enemies of peace may have thought that the serious debate currently before the House of Representatives would distract Americans or weaken our resolve to face him down. But once more, the United States has proven that although we are never eager to use force, when we must act in America's vital interests, we will do so.
Bridget, any word yet of a new deployment to the Gulf region?
Well, Rod, I just spoke with Major Richard Steele. He's the spokesperson for the 10th Mountain Division, and he tells me as of this hour there has been no change. Fort Drum has not gotten the call. But if the call does come, this is where it will first be received. This is the headquarters building. You see that right now in just a few rooms there are lights on. In one of those rooms there's a machine, much like a fax machine, and that is how the message would be sent. If the call comes, the troops here at Fort Drum will be ready to go immediately.
Stephanie Nazaro continues our team coverage from Hancock Air Base, home of the 174th Fighter Wing. Stephanie, what's the perspective there on today's attack?
That it is needed, Rod, and the time for warning Saddam Hussein is over. Of course, the entire nation is watching the events in Iraq very closely, but not too long ago, the people right here in central New York had a special interest in what was going on in the Gulf when planes like the A-10 tank killer behind me and the men and women of this unit were in the fight. From the first days of deployment to the night we watched the sky light up with anti-aircraft fire, we always knew in Desert Storm that our soldiers were in harm's way. Those familiar with today's attack want us to know it's the same.
And we can be particularly proud tonight of those that are answering the call in the skies over Iraq and the Persian Gulf.
Right now, an additional force of aircraft is being sent to the Persian Gulf. Lieutenant Colonel Anderson says he does not believe that any members of the 174th will be part of that unit because right now this unit is undergoing a major overhaul of its planes. In fact, he doesn't expect the unit to be completely combat ready for about another year. However, he does point out that any individual member of this unit, Rod, any group of people from this unit could be called into service at any moment.
He's been following the political implications of Operation Desert Fox. Bill, what's the sentiment among the representatives that you've spoken to about the impeachment question?
Well, Rod, something unusual happened today here in Washington. Just about the time the attack was being launched on Iraq, Republicans were gathering for a major conference on just what to do about the situation. Their leaders earlier in the day had come out in support of the action and had said probably they would hold off on impeachment proceedings until after any conflict was over. When they met behind closed doors with their members, we are told they got an earful, that many of those members wanted to go ahead with the impeachment proceedings tomorrow. They were finally talked out of that, but tonight we were given an open-ended schedule by the new Speaker, Livingston. He says that they could resume their negotiations and deliberations on impeachment as early as Friday. It's more likely it will happen over the weekend. Again today, the momentum was building toward impeachment. We heard more and more moderates changing their stands and saying that they would support impeachment.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Cummings.
And I'm Carrie Lazarus, and welcome to our special News Channel 9 2000 coverage. Here and around the world, the celebrations are on, and many eyes, of course, are watching to see if the Y2K bug crashes the party.
So far, the bug is a bust. There have been no problems reported in Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, or the U.S. territory of Guam, all of which have already entered the new year.
Predictions of chaos just haven't turned out, even in countries that were considered to be most susceptible. So far, everything has been going very smoothly with both computers and all the New Year's celebrations.
We'll have more on Central New Yorkers getting ready to ring in the new year.
But first, a check of other preparations for the heavily anticipated transition to 2000. Bill Carey begins our live team coverage from the Civic Center, where Onondaga County has set up its command center to deal with any crises that may come up. Bill, it looks like all the countries that have preceded us have done so fairly smoothly. Is it giving workers there a sense that maybe they won't have any trouble tonight?
Actually, there is a very low expectation here of any serious problems in the hours ahead, Dan and Carrie. Much of what we're seeing here tonight is in reaction to all of the reporting that's been done in recent months about Y2K. As a result, the federal government felt compelled to set up some kind of center to monitor all the developments as the year turned over, the clock turned over to January 1st. It then sent out statements to state governments, which then felt compelled themselves to set up their emergency operations center. There's one in Albany in operation tonight. And then the state sent out notices to all the counties that they should take special steps, and thus we have an emergency center here.
About 3 levels of concern Niagara Mohawk has. One is electricity. They have 1.5 million electric customers. Will the lights stay on? They say they will. They have 500,000 natural gas customers. Will the natural gas get to our homes, and will it do without interruption or without incident? They say that it will. And there's a third area of concern, and that is nuclear plant safety. Now, the Chief Operating Officer of Niagara Mohawk, Darlene Kerr, says their 2 nuclear plants at Scriba have passed the Y2K test.
We're Y2K compliant with nuclear, have gone through a series of tests, and we are very confident. Obviously, today we are watching the occurrences around the world as different countries enter the new millennium and seeing how their nuclear operations are going, and there are no Y2K problems at this point in time.
From power to transportation now, Y2K concerns have really affected air travel for tonight and this weekend. Airlines have cut their flights by 20% or more. Our live coverage continues now from Hancock International Airport, where Nancy Duffy is standing by. Nancy, I know it's quiet there. Have there been any special preparations made by airport staff for this big night?
Well, yes, it is quiet, Dan. I think there's only 2 people waiting for flights to come in. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot going on here behind the scenes. There are 15 police officers, including 2 bomb dogs. You can see one behind me being walked right now. And what you can't see, there are 70 security cameras, and they're capable of watching every inch of this airport, and they're throughout the entire facility. The security precautions for both human concerns and computer concerns have been going on by the Syracuse Police Department for some 6 months now, and what has evolved is a very sophisticated system, one that has virtually become a model for airports throughout the Northeast. So we should feel very, very much secure here. Airports, as you know, is always a place for security problems every day of the year, but on New Year's Eve especially so. And that we can be proud that the Syracuse Police Department has this airport in tight, tight security.
Thanks, Nancy. From the sounds of it, it couldn't be much quieter at the airport unless it was closed, I guess.
00, nothing, I don't know. I want to describe it as aught. So it'd be like January 15th, aught.
00. January 15th, 00. I don't believe in aught. I don't know what that means. I ought not to do that.
People have had one of two reactions to this Y2K threat. They've either shrugged it off or they've stocked up.
And for those who are doing the stocking, a special Y2K store has been operating out of Fayetteville Mall for the last few months. They carry all the essentials, oil lamps, emergency cooking and lighting kits, crank-operated radios. May be quiet here today, but the store owner says it ain't over yet.
Yeah, I think we can expect a lot, but not necessarily tonight. I think the problems really are not going to begin until well into the new year.
The store is closed for the evening, but the coming of 2000 does not spell the end of the line for the Y2K store.
No, they expect to keep it open a few more months just in case. The arrival of the new year around the world has been orderly, but you can't say it's been uneventful.
Here in central New York, our region is getting ready to party and hoping for few, if any, Y2K troubles.
We'll have live coverage of the preparations for keeping the lights on and getting the good times rolling after a look at what has changed around the world today. First of all, Moscow. Bye-bye Boris. President Yeltsin left fellow Russians in shock when he ended the year by resigning. He wants Prime Minister Vladimir Putin to be his successor. President Clinton, often irritated by Yeltsin's erratic behavior, had nothing but praise for the outgoing president and for Yeltsin's efforts to establish democracy in Russia.
Serving Central New York for 50 years, News Channel 9, the local station.